Hello, beautifuls. You are listening to Bliss and Grit. I'm Vanessa Scotto, and I'll be joined soon by my dear friend and co-host, Brooke Thomas. On the show, we're talking about being on the embodied spiritual path. And what does that actually mean? What is a real evolution of our lives? How do we ultimately embrace everything? All the beauty and crazy, the joys and the messes, the bliss and a grit that is a human life. Whether you're new to the show or you've been listening for a while, here's the frame. We're not putting these conversations forward as the word. We're sure as hell are not gurus, but we are a couple of regular humans having a conversation and sharing our personal experiences as we follow our own paths. So today we're talking about the glorious nervous system. Recently, we heard a spiritual teacher named Matt Kahn say that the ego is the imagination of an overactive nervous system. As longtime mind-body practitioners, we found this super interesting, especially since it happened to coincide with our own exploration on how our limbic brain may be affecting our health. So we got to thinking about the role the nervous system might play in awakening to truth. In spiritual communities, you'll hear people talk a lot about concepts like fear versus love or fear versus clarity. But is there benefit to exploring fear through the lens of the nervous system? Does that exploration create more softness, or does it actually trigger a shame spiral that births more fear? So we're talking about all this and more as we explore the beauty that is our body. If you're enjoying this show, please go ahead and leave us a review on iTunes or on our Facebook page, which is Bliss and Grit. Also, please head over to blissandgrit.com to see all our new goodies and to subscribe to hear updates to upcoming events or to get our newsletter. If y'all have been following us on social media, you'll see that we have merchandise, which is a really amazing way for you to get something gorgeous and also to support us on the show. One last note before we head into the talk. Brooke and I can curse sometimes, so if you're in mixed company, you may want to put on headphones. Okay, here we go. Hello, Brooke.
Hello, Vanessa.
The topic at hand today is the nervous system. And what, if any, role does it play in awakening to your truth? You know, awakening to yourself or awakening to life. Or fuck it, awakening. Let's just say awakening.
Let's just not couch it.
Just trying to
say that we talk about that shit around here sometimes.
Fine. Let's just admit it. We're talking about awakening. So.
The process of coming out of the closet.
So what role does that have to play? I went to the doctor last week. So I went to the doctor because I got re-exposed to some stuff with mold in my house. And if you haven't listened for a long time, I got sick from mold poisoning. So I have quite a severe reaction. So I got exposed to some mold stuff and I had a relapse of some of my old symptoms. So I go to the doctor expecting to test my immune system and, you know, kind of run through the physical exams that I'm accustomed to. But this was a new doctor. And he basically spent the 30 minutes with me talking about how this was a limbic system issue. And I was at first like, what are we talking about here, right? Like I got exposed to mold. I have physical symptoms that happen as a reaction because the toxins affect you, you know, yada, yada, yada. And it's funny, Brooke, how, I don't know, everything comes full circle, right? Like here I am, a mind-body doctor. I mean, that's what I've always been, right? A mind-body doctor, which is what Rolfing is, right? Forget the word doctor, but we are mind-body practitioners. And I've studied the limbic system, which for all of you who are listening, if you're not familiar, it's a part of the brain that gets activated when we perceive stress or when we perceive an emergency. And it really cues up what we can call your fight, flight, freeze, placate nervous system. So what he is essentially pointing towards was when the mold comes in and attacks your brain, It stimulates, it attacks your limbic system. Your body perceives an emergency. When your body perceives an emergency, it goes into a state of prolonged stress. Yada, 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 you get sick, right? So I'm like, okay. I mean, I sound like Godoy, right? Because what we're talking about is PTSD. Something occurs. Your body has an intense reaction to it. It moves into a state of fear. It perceives it has to fight for its survival, and it creates a cascading sequence of events, right? Including it affects your health, affects the way you see the world. So we're really talking about this sort of very commonly spoken of PTSD cycle. Only in this case, he's pointing to it having a physical trigger, and sometimes it's a psychological trigger. So this is happening, right? I'm getting this information. He tells me to read this book at the very same time as I'm listening to this talk by Matt Kahn. And I think it was the podcast on Sounds True. It's the Sounds True producers pick, where they pull an excerpt out of Matt Kahn's book, Whatever Arises, Love That. And Matt Kahn is talking about the ego. And I tried mentioning this last week. It's very hard to describe this talk for some reason to my brain, but he's talking about the nervous system and how the ego is the overstimulated nervous system. And that's happening. And I'm having these profound shifts of love as a reaction to having listened to this whole talk. And all of a sudden, guess what happens? My nervous system calms way down. And guess what? I'm having less symptoms. Side note.
I was just going to ask. I'm curious. Yeah.
Side note. Not perfect, but less symptoms. Okay. So all of this is stirring around, and I feel like I'm going back to old school. Like, right, maybe there's something to the nervous system, right? Like we get on these kicks. I think so much about, maybe I'll think about the mind, or I'll think about pain bodies. Like, I'll kind of group it into concepts. And this whole invitation to start to really understand your body and look at how the human body is wired and this nervous system and what impact it could have on our ability to be open and therefore in love, in receptivity, in awakening, or closed and therefore in fear, in shutdown, seems to be where I'm back at again.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah, no, it's, as you know, on my mind a lot too. We were having that synchronicity thing. And I got the book Vanessa mentioned is Wired for Healing, which I also got and have not started reading yet. Well, this is where my mind is going first, so I'll start here. So one of the things that I notice, because I'm a Rolfing practitioner and I see a lot of people who have your standard fare structural issue stuff, but then I also see people come to see me sometimes when they are at the end of their rope because they have mysterious chronic illnesses or chronic pain conditions. And I used to have one more episode left of Liberated Body. So I've also talked with a lot of really smart people about pain and bodies. And why does this stuff happen? So I understand that our nervous systems and the way we view the world either as a safe place or as a place to be vigilant in the face of has an impact on our physiology, right? Like the mind-body divide is this completely mental construct, it's not even like there's a two-way street. There's no street. They're just the same fucking thing, like it's just, they're exactly the same thing. So my point being, I will frequently with clients who have these kinds of conditions want to pass on to them that I can do Rolfing with them and it will help. However, there is this underlying excessive charge in the nervous system that needs to be addressed in order for any chronic pain condition to heal. And I'm also somebody who had chronic pain for half of my life from a birth injury. So starting on day one. And what I always have to do because of the culture we live in is to explain to people what I'm not saying when I say that. So what I'm not saying to them is it's all in your head. There's something wrong with you psychologically. You have some secret, horrible thing that you've never uncovered that you're about to uncover, and it's wrecking your health. Like, I'm not saying any of those things, but it's really amazing how quickly I watch when I tell people this information, which is basically just like, here's this piece of the healing puzzle, is all I'm saying. Really important one, like the foundational piece of the healing puzzle. And we move to shame so quickly.
Because we're stuck in the limbic system.
Exactly.
Right?
So it's like to deliver this information
that way.
Yes. Of like, oh no. So it's like, how do I deliver the information without the nervous system going, I'm fucked? And then you watch it spiral like the animal, right? Just goes like, I'm fucked. It's terrifying. I have to be vigilant. How do I fix it? I can't fix anything. Like it just, and I feel like this is such a common issue, not just for people with mystery issues or chronic pain. Like we are living in a time. And I feel like in many ways, so much of like technology and all these things that were supposed to make our lives so easy breezy so that we just don't even know what to do with all of our time. And the fact that they've gone the exact opposite way and just made us all excessively, compulsively busy and revved all of our nervous systems up. It's almost like it's perfectly designed to bring us all to this nervous system breaking point where it breaks and we're like, I give up. I have to figure out some other way because fuck this. Either fuck this in a like exasperated, I'm not going to do it anymore way, or the body says fuck this with chronic pain conditions or mystery illnesses.
Holla.
Yeah, hey-o.
I know, because when this guy was saying it to me, okay, so here I am. I'm a mind-body practitioner. On every level, I understand this. Yeah. Right? On every single level.
Yeah, you're well-versed.
When he's saying it to me, my eyes are welling up. Like, it's like, what? But, like, you know, because inside, if I could track back, what I must have been feeling was, don't you see, though? It's so serious. Like, how could it just be this? But what that statement is reflecting is how naive we can be about the effect of fear on us. Right? But no, it's so serious. Like you can't possibly see how serious it is if you think it's this.
Right.
And he's like, beloved, I do see how serious it is. Her whole body is hijacked by fear.
Yeah.
And it's very, very painful. So what was so lovely was this wonderful raveling together. Can something ravel together?
I like it. I don't know if we're using it. It's good.
If it can unravel, it can ravel.
It can ravel.
So it raveled together. What was happening in my spiritual mind and what I'm aware of with body wisdom, which was, in both cases, in my spiritual practices and in my spiritual exploration, and now in my health-based exploration, I'm looking at the same thing, the effect that fear has on a human being. Mm-hmm. And when we talk about fear on this show, or if we talk about pain bodies or whatever wounds, whatever language we're putting to it, again, it's not something you're choosing to do.
Exactly.
It's this primal survival system that's beyond conscious choice that has been hooked and activated and then is running your circuitry, right? So I'm like, oh my God. So what everyone is saying is, wow, fear is a huge part of the human experience. And it wreaks havoc on our ability to see clearly, right? That's the first thing that like an accelerated nervous system becomes hypervigilant to threat, which means it's not clear on when something is a threat versus when something's neutral, right? A hypervigilant nervous system starts to resonate with other hypervigilant nervous systems, becomes more easily amplified. And just from a very basic level, it becomes shut down to input. And so it keeps running off of its own concepts and predictions, right? Yeah. Well, that's the same thing we would talk about if we were just talking from a spiritual angle and we were talking about the effect of fear versus love, or being in the past or future.
Yeah.
We're just
being in your conditioning or being in reality.
Yeah.
If you're conditioned to fear and vigilance. Yeah, I know. It's really fascinating. And there was something I was going to say about that, or I've listened to so many Matt Kahn talks in the last 2 weeks.
Matt, we're coming.
We love you.
We're totally
we're super into it. So I actually couldn't accurately quote which one it was. Shit. Now I also forgot what the fuck part I was going to point out. Oh, he was talking about, because he's Mr. Love Revolution, right? Mm-hmm. And it's about meeting all of these places in yourself with love, and how if that's foreign to your nervous system, it will be received as a foreign invasion, which of course sounds exactly like autoimmune disease, right? Like it's the healing aspect, the immune system, attacking itself because it's afraid that it is a foreign invader that needs to be attacked. So I thought that was fascinating. And like, as somebody, for me, if we're talking the like large level stories that I have, or large level pain bodies, belief systems, whatever you want to say, it's that life is suffering. The world is disgusting. I can't be trusted. I'm going to fuck it up. Like these are the things that I didn't know were running my world until the past year, maybe 2 years, but past year. And so if you're somebody like me, who that was all of your conditioning, to attempt to turn towards yourself with love, my experience, or if love has just arrived. So in my experience, it's been more like love just arrives. Or I'll have some massive realization, like in a meditation or something, some realization about oneness, or some realization about no self. I've had 2 in the past year, totally coming out of the closet today, that have been really profound. And what I notice is that there's this honeymoon period after, where it's like the world's biggest relief. It's like I used to fit in a thimble, and now I'm the size of the universe, and nothing in the whole world is a problem. And it's like I can finally breathe for the first time in my life. Like that kind of, you can't even imagine it, sensation of like unbelievable relief. It's like there's nothing in the world to be afraid of. There's nothing in the world that could ever make me unsafe. And then something happens, and like this idea that, or what we're talking about with the nervous system, puts into context. Fear eats me. It just devours me. And I go under the waves. And then there's all this, and the fear isn't about a thing. Like the fear isn't about this is what's showing up, or, ooh, I had a bad day at work even, or whatever. It's just going about my normal life with this gut level sensation of gnawing terror. Of the exact opposite thing. Everything is wrong in the world, blah, blah, blah. And so it's really interesting to think about, like, when ease and love and relief and acceptance and safety come in, at a certain point, my body goes, what the fuck? Danger.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like when someone's nice to you on the streets of New York and you're thinking, what is it you want?
Totally.
Right? Like,
what are you going to try and
too unfamiliar.
I don't like this. This is not the normal way. Can't be good.
Cannot be good. Warning, warning. This is a misalignment of what I expect.
Yeah. And like, I could make it a big deal. And I certainly have. Like, fear is great at making everything a super big deal. But then you can also put it in a spiritual context where it's like, oh, this must be, just a part of the journey. And it is, because that's what's happening. Like, no one can argue that it isn't a part of the journey, but the story of it must be a required part of the journey. So here's like suffering's little sneaky it's not even a side door in. It's like crawling through the pet door, the little cat door in the back. It's like, oh yeah. But this is the part of the suffering that's required. It's just that like when you're healing and when it's unfamiliar and when it's new, you're going to go through periods of gut clenched terror and like just hang out with it. Just hang out. It's just what happens. It's a normal part of the path. And it's like, it happens, but it doesn't happen because it has to. It happens because your system's wired for the opposite. So there's this funny way where you can like actually unhook it without having to endure months and months and months of agony just because the new voice it's telling you is like, oh yeah, this is totally normal. It happens to everyone. Just, everyone has their dark night that lasts for, 1 to 15 years. So I don't know which one you are, but this is your life now. And I'm not saying like, ooh, I've seen it. And so now fear is not going to come back, because fear absolutely is going to come back, because that's what my system knows how to do. But when I understand that it's just, that's what my system knows how to do, it defangs it in a way that's just really helpful.
Well, and I think you can also catch the medicine in it. So what's the medicine of Matt? Why have you been listening to him right now so much, right? Because it's not just about what we spoke about last week. Okay, so I see the fear, I see the fangs, I see my survival mechanisms, I see the primal wiring. Okay, I tolerate it until it passes. It's like, and I can love that, right? That arises and I can love that. And this part of me, that this wound that's rising up to be held, I can love that, right? And I can hold that. And so then what you're really doing is putting into motion the medicine, right? The soothing balm, right? Which is like, okay, how loving is it to say, it's not necessary that you have to hang out here. Now, maybe you do, but then we'll just love that. And as soon as there's love, it doesn't feel so dark and scary to hang out there, right? It has this like soft, light quality to it, this soft, light texture to it. I mean, I was thinking about the talk we had shared a few weeks back. I think we had done the whole episode on it, where Matt was saying, what is it that's going through the journey, right? So if consciousness is and always was awake, which how could consciousness not is and always be awake? If that's the case, then what is it that we're all referring to when we say, oh, we're on a journey, or we're on a path, or we're evolving and growing? And he said, it's the body. That was his opinion, his experience. He said, it's the body. The body is awakening to consciousness. The body is awakening to your divinity, if that's a fair word to use. So when I started thinking about that, and I started thinking about the nervous system and, everything that we're going through, and this very beautiful and moving concept of loving your body, like having patience with your body as it awakens to the truth that you catch glimpses of in your own awareness mind. I thought, wow, soothing your nervous system. Gadoy.
I love that we're bringing gadoy back into the vernacular, by the way.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a very popular word amongst the young people these days.
Crazy kids.
I mean, it's so straightforward, but it got me thinking, like, right, what was it that I loved about being at Creststone, at Dharma Ocean's program, meditating with the body? Well, you do all of these meditations where you're laying down, where your nervous system gets to rest, right? I mean, your entire nervous system just melts when you're like in this laying down posture and you're feeling your body, and we're in Creststone and the energy is so good, and you're being fed healthy food and you have no electronics, right? So all of that is set up and my nervous system is relaxing. Now, as that happens, then just naturally I become more open. There's nothing to be done about it. I'm not forcing. It's not even with a goal, right? But as I'm being like soothed by the whole experience, then for me, because I get some of those like visuals and mystical experiences, I can start to see things. I can start to know things. I started to just embody, like, like land in my body, because all of a sudden there was an ease present and it didn't feel unsafe, which is just very different than mentally telling yourself you're safe. It's safe. You should be able to do this. Like, come into your body, feel yourself in your body now. Like, why aren't you in your body, motherfucker? Like, it's okay. You're not in your body. No, I have tons of patience. But get in your body.
I know, but you're doing it wrong. P.S.
But now, come on. Like, how about now? It's just such a different thing. So after this weekend Hurricane Irma happened, and I lived in Miami for 5 years. I have such fondness for it. I have so many friends there. Hurricane Harvey just happened in Texas like a month ago. I don't know, weeks ago, whatever it was. So fucking much going on in the world. And my nervous system is like all tense, right? Mm-hmm. I spent a weekend looking at Facebook like a maniac.
Yeah.
So today I was like, I'm going to go for a restorative yoga class. And the part that's afraid, I'm going to love that. And the body that's kind of all taut, I'm going to love that. And I just started to bring in this understanding and apply it, right? Mm-hmm. Like, okay, I can make spaciousness. I can start to bring in some warmth and soothing. And then from there, my cells can open, right? Like, you've read Bruce Lipton's Biology of Belief, right? You ever read that book?
It's been a while, but yes. But it's been so long, I couldn't.
Well, there's just one thing I take from it, that I always take from it, that cells are either opened or closed, right? They either are receptive, and then they can take in nutrients, they can take in information that they need, energy information that they need to function, or they're defended and closed. And he uses that cells as that cellular understanding as a metaphor for us. We're either open or closed. Mm-hmm. We don't think of it like that, because it's like, even when my limbic system is hijacked and I'm in a state of fear, I still love Brooke, right? I still feel you. I still get input from you, right? Like, you can affect the way I'm perceiving something, or you can make me laugh, right? So we don't perceive it as open or closed. But I do have to imagine there's something about when we're in fear that leaves us mostly in the world of concept. So I happen to also like to love, and I like to laugh, and I like Brooke, and I like the concept of Brooke, and I like the concept of my friendship. And so I can be open to all of that because it's not foreign data, right? It's all what I'm expecting.
Yeah.
It's all what I'm like open towards in a way. But what about new information? What about being in touch with reality that's got gobs of information, right, coming at you at any point? What about the fact that maybe there's, I don't know, could there be an angel over my shoulder? I don't know. Maybe, right? Like, I don't know, right? Would I be open to that? And so maybe it is so cut and dried as to say we're either in alarm, and therefore we're shutting down and only including information that we have at some point deemed as acceptable.
Yeah.
Or we're open to reality, in which case everything is coming through in some unfiltered way that feels really welcome. What do you think about that?
I like it. All right.
Just make it up. I mean, not on my own. A lot of people make up things just like this.
Yeah, that's true. I think you're onto something. Fuck my words. I mean, I think all of our episodes might just devolve into you and I going like, I don't,
it's a little
more brain fart,
worrisome.
More brain fart. It is a little worrisome, but it's also fine. This is what happens when you're exploring new turf. Oh, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, just if you're one of the nervous systems where it's more vigilant and you're more in fight, flight, freeze. I liked placate being added, by the way. That was news to me.
That's
very
a
good
recent
addition.
Development in the field of trauma research.
Makes good sense. And so, of course, you're filtering for what fits with your concept in this open closed model. It goes without saying that, like, there is so much goodness. And it comes down to a question. And like, this is for me, what I get to play with right now is like, can I tolerate it? I mean, I think most of us don't have the concept that we are intolerant of ease and goodness and nourishment and safety. What I've learned about myself is that like there was an intolerance there. And now it's like I'm a person in recovery and I'm a hardness junkie in a certain way, not because I'm a bad person, not because I like it, like, but just because that's how I learned how to orient in the world and completely below the level of awareness. So then it comes up to the level of awareness and it's like, oh, what I'm doing is just building my capacity, my tolerance for ease and goodness and nourishment. And there will be good days and bad days. Like there will be days where I just don't feel that way, right? Like, and so fear is there. And then I have to turn towards that and see, can I love that? Which is like really an amazing practice because it hijacks you. It takes you off down its road, you know, where it's telling you the stories like, oh, fuck, I'm consumed by fear again. I thought that was over. I was feeling really good for a while. Why is this still happening? La, la, la. And then as soon as you catch yourself having that kind of conversation, you can go like, the one who doesn't want to have to feel fear anymore and is so angry that they feel it. I love you. Like the fear itself, the gut clench that in its innocence thinks it needs to be there, just got wired to be there. Like, I love you. Like, but really like, oh, I see you. So I guess it starts with I see you, right? And Matt Kahn talks about that too. But it's just so relieving even to do the I see you. And then like, oh, of course. You know, it's totally an innocence. Of course you're there. Of course that's your habit.
Well, did you trip out on the part where, I mean, in this podcast episode that I referenced at the beginning, where he's talking about the ego being the imagination of an overactive nervous system, what he's essentially saying is your nervous system is picking up the activity in other people's nervous systems.
Yeah, and patterning.
Right, and patterning, right? So especially if you're a sensitive person, empathic person, you're picking up on all of this debris floating around in other people's nervous systems, right? And he described something that I felt was really true for me because he said that at first he took it to mean something about him, right? Well, okay, I can feel all this stuff happening in someone's nervous system. They seem upset or they seem angry or sad or, you know, afraid, whatever you're picking up on. So it must be something about me, right? Like they don't like me, maybe.
Right. Yeah. Maybe I could be more pleasing.
Yes. They must not like me because they have all this stuff that's up, right? Which was where he was developing, you know, mistaken thinking, which I can totally relate to.
Yeah.
And then he went further to say, well, okay, so all this stuff is up in their nervous system and I can feel it in their field, right? Because the nervous system's electrical. So like, hello, if energy is coming off someone, it makes sense to use this way of looking at it. So I will then take all of this energy out of their field into mine, and then they'll be available to like me. Right? Or love me or resonate at this level. And I really got that because I could imagine like you're absorbing things from people's field, right? From their nervous system. And you're patterning just like them. So it's like, okay, I got that. And I thought that was really interesting because I think it was last week where I was talking about loving the part of me that was dying, you know, this spontaneous movement to wrap myself in love. And observing that there's this piece of me that sometimes just wants to give up. It's like that particular little wounded part that's really actually quite young was like, why bother, right? You know, like I'll die. No one even cares if I die. You know, it doesn't mean anything anyway. It's like that's what sort of the tenor of this part was. And I'm discussing it with Kieran and I have this sort of revelation that's like, oh my God, you know, because when I was up against my parents, I think that's some of what they were feeling. Like if my kids don't love me, they're my whole life, right? I gave my whole life to my family. Everything I am, every choice I made, they made through this filter of family has to be first and family is sacrifice and love is sacrifice, right? Those were all the things they absorbed. And so there was this real life and death quality about it. Like if the family wasn't feeling nourishing to them, it felt like there was no point to their life.
Yeah.
Right. And so then that's part of what I'm absorbing into my nervous system. It's like, oh, there's no point to life if I'm not doing it right.
Yeah.
Right. If I'm not making them happy. And here we are, just these like resonating bands. And so I thought, okay, that's so interesting, because once I can see it that way, you know, part of what we're talking about is the depathologizing of these things for everybody. That's why Matt uses that word innocence, which is such a beautiful word, because
so
it's like it's all happening in innocence. It's all just, we have these little tender hearts and we want to be happy, and we do want people to be happy, and everyone just wants to love, and all these things are just happening in innocence. We're modeling to kind of be like them and to maybe take some of their pain, and you know, and here we are. We don't even understand. We can't even understand, you know, the kind of choices that are being made, right? They're just choices that are being made by our system, you know, which is divine, and who can understand that? So I just thought that was all a really interesting thing. And the depathologizing is so important, because it's like something you and I were just talking about. We rail against the field of self-help sometimes. And it's not because anyone is a problem, like there's a teacher that we're trying to admonish. It's because we get upset with the concept that we are a problem, or that we have a problem to solve.
That we need to keep striving and self-improving so that we're finally worthy to exist.
Because that line of thinking is coming from a cranked nervous system.
Yes, it is
and
fear.
That line of thinking feeds the cranked nervous system.
Yeah, it just keeps feeding the demon.
And then we can't feel the love.
Right.
And then we're like, what's the problem? Why am I stuck here? I just want to feel the love. There must be something wrong with me. Let me try something.
I know. I mean, story of my fucking life, up until like I discovered there was this whole other way to go. But it's like, oh, okay, like I can just lean in harder with this new strategy. And then like, oh, that didn't work. Okay, well, I guess I have to actually lean in harder. I guess that's why I was saying before, like, I feel like there is something so beautiful in the fact that we're all so burnt out. Because at a certain point, you say uncle. And you're just like, I'm not willing to keep striving. I'm not willing to keep adopting new strategies, or to keep self-improving, like, or to keep suffering in this way. Like, I'm just not willing. There has to be something else going on. And then suddenly you see that like all of the attempts to get away from the fear were feeding the beast. And it's like, oh. And then, you know, it's quite shocking. Like, how do I have even any capacity to not suffer? Like, oh my God. Are you shitting me? Like, so much of this has just been my own habit of suffering. And then like the voice comes in like, you're not, yes. And that's the way you're a fuck up, is the way, like, oh, good. As long as I get to point a finger at something you're doing wrong, I'll take it, whatever. The thing you're doing wrong is suffering, like that you're addicted to suffering. And since we're just going to quote Matt Kahn this entire episode, and maybe many more, I don't know. He was talking about that the reason why he asked the universe for guidance, like on the question, what is the ego? Certainly he was somebody who was well versed, but like, no, really tell me, what is the ego? Is because what we want to do in spiritual circles is just make it a problem all day long. And I was listening to this morning before this talk. He was like, and I just know that it cannot be coming from the highest wisdom if it's against something. If it's not coming from love, it can't be real highest wisdom. So if we keep like, oh, okay, well, it's that underneath this fuck up ego that's wrecking everything with its wrecking ball conditioning and the mess it's making of its life. There's some true nature. There's some genuine self. And I'm going to get rid of it, the enemy, the ego. so that I can fix it. We have to make friends with everything, right? Like it's not this separate thing that's the real demon that's wrecking our lives. Like how do we even just see, coming back to that word innocence, like it's beautiful, beautiful innocence. And just to loop back to what I was saying about, trying to talk with clients about these concepts, I always feel like I'm trying to crack the code. Like, how do I communicate this information in a shame-free way? Like where their system isn't going to move to shame and self-condemnation. Like how, and I haven't cracked the code, because of course I think it's unique for everyone, but also because that's what nervous systems that are cranked do. They immediately go, oh, okay, there's a problem with me. She's pointing out the problem with me. And then it can adapt it in whatever flavor it wants. Like it's because she thinks I'm traumatized. It's because she thinks whatever. And really all I'm saying is like, there is a way home. Like there is a way, there's such good news. Like the good news is there's nothing wrong with, like nothing is a problem, which is a whole other thing.
Only
maybe.
Here's the problem.
Only, well, this is what I was saying before. Like there's nothing is a problem and the suffering is real. Like,
well, I think that's what you're pointing to, though, is the dangerous. It's not fucking dangerous. That's a melodramatic word. But the edge, right? The edge that you're noticing is we're a culture of problem solvers, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's what we do when we want to control life. So we decide what the problem is and we decide how we will uniquely solve the problem. And that gives us a sense that we're in control. If there's no problem to solve, how can we be better? Oh my God, I just have to trust life that something's going to happen, right? So we don't do that. We're a culture of problem solvers. So with that, as soon as someone discusses something, the other person's already turning it into a problem to solve.
Right.
And the whole language of the conversation gets loaded with, there's a problem, here's how to solve it.
Yes.
Right? And it's so easy for that conversation to get loaded that way, right? Because language maybe has a way of doing that in general, right? So we're like, oh, beloved, your nervous system is cranked. Here's the problem. So then what you're going to do is, and here's the solution, right? So, and
in the solution is the potential to get it wrong or get it right.
Right. Oh, so it's like, that's why language fails. So, I mean, of course, it's not your job to figure out how to say it to them. But what suppose we are working with is if we can embody that in our nervous system, then we can be potent messengers for people, right? Just vibrationally. Oh my God. The term I heard today when I was listening to Whatever Arises, love that. And if anyone knows Matt Kahn and you want to get him on the show for us, clearly we're having a love affair with him. So let us know about that.
Make it happen. Make it so.
Make it so. So the quote he said today was vibrational codependency.
Yeah, that's a good one. Mm-hmm.
That's a goodie. And it's kind of a side note on what we were actually talking about, but I just had to
it's such a goodie.
But with vibrational codependency, there is such a thing as we reach a certain state of vibration and people resonate there. It's just like that. It's just how it is, right? That's why it can feel really powerfully healing to be around certain teachers, that you can feel safe and you can open and you can reach these states. It's part of what we're appreciating about Matt right now. So all that was to say is I don't think it's the words anyway. I think it's as we're taking that into our system and really starting to reorient to, we don't have to make this a problem because, like you were saying, everything's one. So where could there be a problem? How could anything be a problem? How could I have a problem with anyone if everything's one? If everything's one, how can my body be a problem? If everything's one, how can death be a problem? There can't be problems, but we're not starting from the philosophical experience or vantage point that we are one. So then our language gets based around problem solve.
Yes, exactly.
right? Which is very time and place oriented and very separation oriented.
Yeah.
So of course it's hard, right? Because until you're at the vantage point, like the actual experience of holy shit, it really is one.
Right. And oh my God, nothing's a problem. What?
Whoa. Then how do you get there? Right.
Yeah.
So then you just have to deliver what we can deliver both to ourselves and to each other, which is with as much love and softness as we can.
Yeah.
Which is like, this hurts and it's all okay. And I love it. Love you.
Yeah.
It's really masterful shit. I mean, that's why
yeah.
we already have known this. This is not at all new information, and we're still mind-blowing from it.
Yeah.
Because it's masterful shit, at least for us. I mean, at least for me, based on what my life story was. No, I think that
this is masterful shit. I'm going to go ahead and say that it just is. On our planet, it is. You know, to actually land in this experientially and to not do all the cognitive trickiness, which is either problem solution, making it a problem, or saying like, well, yes, I'm going to be on the A team of spiritual masters if I say that I understand oneness. So what I'm going to do is say nothing's a problem. And I'm going to go up, up and away. And like, everything's great. And just, if anyone ever comes to you in pain or suffering or with a heavy heart, you just sort of shut them down with the like, oh no, but it's all good, you know, which is not, or you always move away, you know, like, oh, those humans with their stinky problems. I don't dwell in that realm anymore. Right. So like, this is what we can watch all over the place. These varieties of ways of us trying to land in this experience and getting tripped.
Yeah, getting almost farther in a different direction.
Right.
Well, this is why it's all about experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
So our words are just carrying an experience ultimately. And that's why we have to discover for ourselves, like until I could have that experience, like, oh my God, I actually loved myself. Mm-hmm. This is what it means to move towards your body like it's a baby. Mm. I heard Kieran talk about that. I didn't get there yet. You know, like we need to have that experience, the experience of oneness. Or these things are just ideas, and ideas can be twisted in any which way that our system wants to, especially if our system's hijacked in fear. Right. It will twist it into a way that fits more in alignment with our reality.
Right. And then sometimes you won't catch it forever down the road. And like, I'm in the middle of a bajillion of those right now. And I'll look back and I'll go, I didn't see that either. And I remember when we saw Adyashanti in Ithaca, it was so relieving. He was like, it's not a problem. Like, don't worry about getting it wrong. Like your devotion to opening, right? Like your devotion to openness to reality and to life will always self-correct course. Doesn't matter. Like go have that big, awful, messy, high drama relationship. And then you'll eventually go, I'm done now. You know, like be the slow blink. The wheel
falls off.
Exactly. Be the slow blink spiritual person who really thinks that they're the ascended one and they really get it. And then you'll go, oh my God, I'm such an asshole. And then you'll course correct. Like it's fine. We're humans. We're going to do it.
You can't control the unfolding of truth anyway. So guess what? It's all happening.
Yeah.
So guess what? It's all like ultimately okay. But I feel like what we can do, if it feels right, is we can say, oh, like I did this weekend. I spent all weekend cranking my nervous system and flooding it with fear. And I did it on purpose. I really wanted to know what was happening with my friends. I didn't feel like being cut off from the world. And, you know, so that's fine. But now I could maybe immerse myself in something softer. Right? Because that would be very loving to my body. And then I support myself in being able to be open. And I think that's a really simple and loving thought. And, you know, what Matt says, I think part of what I'm appreciating is you do all this work with your chakras and opening this and opening that. And I think there's a lot to be said on that topic. But ultimately, if you can walk in love, if as you can, you know, immerse in love, it all opens and aligns.
Yeah.
Ooh, like what's more juicy than that?
Yeah.
Like rather than having to breathe for, a 2-week retreat just into my heart chakra, like, oh, if I could just walk and love, it all opens and aligns. Like,
Right.
what a beautiful practice.
Mm-hmm.
Probably people listening have even more to say about the nervous system than we just addressed. There's so much
for sure. And when we first brought up the
richness.
topic, I was like, you know what I don't want to do is go into liberated body brain and be like, well, this research, because like that's all good and useful, but we're really trying to point to the experience.
The experience. But I want to hear your experiences. I know one listener in particular who is beautifully obsessed with helping people find self-care through bringing love and compassion through the nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really gorgeous.
Yeah.
And, if all of you out there, because I know a lot of people are listening to us who started at Liberated Bodies. So I know there's a good percentage of listeners who may be like nervous system crusaders who are out
to the nervous system,
bringing the good word to the world. Here's the one little bit of advice I would give. Is that as we are advocates for love and care for our nervous system, let's not scream so loud that people get frightened that they have a problem. You know what I'm saying?
I do know, and I've done it to so many clients and myself for so many years. I get it.
Thank you so much for listening to today's show. The show notes, including any resources we mentioned, live at blissandgrit.com. Go over to the website and scroll down and you'll see each episode's separate post, and we put the resources right in there. You can also check out our website, blissandgrit.com, to see all of the merchandise we had designed especially for the show. It's a great way to support us and get some cool swag while you're at it. We'd love for you to come play with us on Instagram and Facebook. We are Bliss and Grit at both of those spots. And finally, if you want to support the show, you can also write us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or on our Facebook page, which is Bliss and Grit. It helps people find us, and we can create a really rich community of other sensey people. Huge gratitude for those of you who have already written reviews. Here's one we got on our Facebook page from Tara Taylor, who said, just wanted to share that I send choice episodes of Bliss and Grit in the welcome letter for the yoga retreats that I lead, and ask future attendees to listen as a primer for the experience. Thank you for an intelligent discussion that exposes the light while standing firm and refusing to run away from the darkness. Appreciate you, ladies. Well, thank you, Tara. We appreciate you too. That's very sweet to read. And thanks to all of you for listening. We'll be back next week.